I like it when we agree.
Yeah,
man.
man.
Yeah, that's good.
Dickhead.
All
right.
Cut.
Hello. This is probably the first time you're listening or watching us, and this is Think Twice. My name is Ben Urbano.
My name is Sam Tef.
And on this show, like, we talk about different ideologies, different systems, different structures, sort of have a discussion on it, see where we land, and try and sort of give you guys some information, and you hear our various viewpoints on various different topics, and that might change the way you think, hence why it's called Think Twice, you know what I mean? And there's three of us.
Come on now.
So however you're joining us, thank you for listening, thank you for watching. We really appreciate you and much love. Today, we're starting hot.
Hot.
Can't lie to you. We're starting on like a topic which is kind of hot in our generation, and it's capitalism.
We don't shy away from the big issues here. Think twice.
Yeah, we got capitalism here. And capitalism gets a bad rap. And it might even get a worse rap today. Or some of us are capitalists, you know? But we're gonna find out. Capitalism is essentially like a economic system, right? That's sort of like characterized by pursuit of profit, private ownership, and like means of production. And
Absolutely.
it's sort of market-driven competition and the rest of it, basically.
100%.
In this show, we discuss, and a lot of our discussions come from an ethical or moral standpoint. And we try and see what's moral, and we try and define what we believe to be ethical and how society should then move forward.
Mm-hmm.
If this is watched by millions and millions of people, you know, we'll have an impact on society, right?
100%.
Yeah, a good impact.
That's what we want.
You know what I mean? So the first question is the pursuit of profit morally just, Tef?
No. It is immoral. Now, before I lay out my idea here.
Yeah, lay it out, man. One sec. You guys are hearing this, right? Profit is immoral, apparently. But let him go further.
Why are you going to the camera? Like, man. What are they going to do for you?
I'm just trying to let them know what you just said. I just wanted to make it clear.
They're not going to.
I just wanted to make it very, very clear what you said. Okay, let's go.
To me, in capitalism, profit, what actually is profit, is the surplus value that workers create in the process of production at a company. Right? And in capitalism...
It's not right, but yeah, cool.
In capitalism, that surplus goes to the owners, right? So point number one, by its very nature, to me, profit is immoral. Because it's not going to the people who create it, number one, right? Number two, the pursuit of profit, now, going back to the question, is the pursuit of profit morally just? The pursuit of profit is about enriching the owners, the few, at the expense of the many, i.e. the workers. So to me, the pursuit of profit is morally unjust. Does that make sense?
So if you're the worker...
Right. That creates the surplus value, you should be entitled to that surplus value. You created it, right?
So would that mean that profit's then okay in that scenario?
If it went back to the person who created it, yes.
Okay.
But now we're no longer talking about capitalism.
Yeah, okay.
Right? We're talking about something else. So what do you think?
I
get the sense that you think...
You get the sense, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Okay. You see, like, the way I sort of see things is, I see us that we live in a community, right?
Right.
In a financial structure, we have the government, we have businesses, and we have consumers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of see it as like a road. So say the government is the road because the government sort of lays out the regulations as what we can and can't do. So it's sort of the road. And the businesses are the coach.
Sure.
And the consumers are the people.
On the coach.
Sure. And at the end of this road is prosperity. And the way I sort of see it is that businesses and capitalism is driving people towards prosperity. So, we'll come to more about that later on.
I've got some problems with your analogy. I've got some problems. Can I articulate
Not just yet.
Damn.
If we understand profit as a positive net gain, right? That's an accepted definition. Like, profit is a positive net gain.
in a company.
In this scenario, it's a financial. It's a financial net. Positive
Financial net gain,
gain.
but I'm saying in a company, as in the profit exists within the company. That's all
Okay.
I'm saying. Yeah, where it is.
And the way you sort of explained it is there's a business, right? So say I am a business owner, the entrepreneur, and I have an investor, I have a consumer, and I have someone that does the work, right?
Sure.
I see that as a community.
Yeah.
And I see it as mutually beneficial to everybody in the community. And in order for the community to be sustainable, everybody needs to benefit. And so an idea in and of itself is only an idea, right? So you have someone to do the work, the laborer.
Mm-hmm.
He's now bringing my idea to life. I am now paying him for bringing my idea to life. That is my value, the idea. This wouldn't have been able to happen without the investor,
Without the capital.
without the capital.
Right.
So the investors now,
I have qualms about that. I don't think that's true.
okay, but this is the community I'm creating, right? In a capitalist society, this happens.
is how it works. Yeah,
this is how
you're right.
this works. So you've got an investor who now believes in the idea and values the idea and invests in the idea. He now gets some money too. And then the product that you've produced, the consumer now gets value from the product that you're producing and now pay you for the idea that you came up with.
Right.
And so as an ecosystem, everybody is benefiting from capitalism.
Right. I'll continue with that analogy. I like that analogy. You've got an investor, a company owner, someone who runs the company, someone who works, and a consumer. Let's work backwards from the consumer buying the thing, yeah? Let's say it's this iPad, right? Let's say they buy it for £100 to make the numbers nice and easy. They buy it for £100. How should that £100 be allocated in our minds, right? Because there's raw materials, right, that make up the iPad. Those raw materials need to be arranged in a certain way to create the iPad. The worker does that, right? So to me, the worker creates that £100 of value. What element of that £100 is being contributed by the owner or the investor, who don't ever go to the factory, who never touch the raw materials?
So to say value and people should only be paid if they have physically done the work. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying the majority of the work is done for the iPad in the physical arrangement of the iPad.
I don't agree with that at all.
So what does Tim Cook actually do on an iPad to iPad level?
Oh my God. I feel like that's a ridiculous path to go down.
Let's go down it.
Essentially because like, to suggest that anybody could come up with the idea to create that.
I'm not saying that. I never said that. But
And I'm just saying, if the idea that anybody could come up with the idea to create it and design it, and then for somebody to make it, that's where the value should go because they have made it, even though somebody came up with the idea and the design, I think is egregious.
Okay, let me make it a bit more extreme, right? Forget Tim Cook. Let's say I bought one share of Apple today, right? I am a shareholder, I'm an owner now of Apple. Every Apple product that's sold, I, in some way, benefit. I get profit out of the company, yeah? The company might pay me dividends for my ownership, right? As an owner of Apple, what on earth have I done to deserve the profit of selling the iPads? I don't necessarily deserve the profit of that. But all of the profit goes to me and my fellow shareholders. All of it. None of the profit ever goes to the workers. Not a dime.
But I think that's the importance of the market. Even though it's flawed, I'm not saying capitalism is perfect, but that's the idea of the market. So like what you would be happy with is what the market is going to pay you.
Yes, but workers aren't as free as owners are. I can buy a share in Apple, become an owner, I could sell it, I can move around the world. I'm not tethered to Apple.
But let's not do it as if like you can buy a share and because of that share you now can move all over the world.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying when I buy a share of Apple, I'm not tethered to Apple. I'm not tethered to California where
Yeah,
Apple's,
yeah.
you know what I mean? That's what I meant. I'm not tethered to it, and I still go about my life in the way I did before I bought the share. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
However, if I work for Apple, I'm tethered to the geographical location of Apple. On some level, I have to arrange my life around this job.
Yeah, but you receive benefit from that. You receive something for that. It's not as if you don't receive something for that.
Yeah.
And what you receive is sort of like the accepted amount because of a competitive market.
Yes, but going back to the question, I want to ask you direct, yeah?
But going back to the question is why the pursuit of profit can be morally just. And it is morally just because everybody in that community now benefits. There's a benefit to everybody in the community.
And I want to touch on exactly that fraternal phrase. There's a benefit to everyone in the community. I agree that there's a benefit. Everyone kind of gets something. What I'm saying is the share of what everyone is getting is currently unfair, and that's what makes profit unjust. Now, do you accept that the worker doesn't receive any surplus value for their labor? That's fair enough to say?
Yeah. That's fair enough to say.
Would you give the worker some, in an ideal world, would you give them some surplus value?
Yes.
Right. So we are in agreement that profit in the context of capitalism
In the second
isn't
question,
fair.
we'll probably be able to go into it a bit more.
Yeah.
We'll go into it a bit more about that. But like the idea that it's not morally just really does confuse me. So for example, say we have this show and it booms because you lot watch it and you love it and it booms. And we then monetize it and we make profit from it. Would that be immoral?
No. Absolutely not.
That's
moral.
So profit as a whole, financial profit as a whole is not morally immoral.
No, don't do that to me.
I'm just saying.
Don't pin me up like that.
You know when I did this question, I was like, when am I gonna just throw this one in there? I was like,
know what? Yeah, you know what? You're excited right now, but I thought about that.
Yeah, I know you did. Let's go. Let's go.
The thing about Think Twice is that technically this is a cooperative. There's no delineation between owners and workers. We own Think Twice, but we also work on Think Twice. So in a sense, the company of Think Twice, to me, is a perfect form of a corporation. Because the people who are the workers who create the value, us, also benefit from their surplus value created. It gets allocated back to us as owners. Does that make sense? And to me, that's a perfect scenario. That's completely different to how a lot of people live their lives working for big corporations. Something like 40% of everyone in the UK works for a big corporation. I worked for a big corporation. Yeah, I worked Big Four Finance. Let me tell you a story about Big Four Finance. I'm like 18, 19, yeah? Fresh out of school, sitting in Canary Wharf, looking at spreadsheets, just crunching numbers.
Yeah, you're good at Excel, man.
Yeah.
When I did my Excel thing the other time, I thought you might have enjoyed that.
Come on.
Yeah, I did that one manually though. But anyways, sorry.
So I'm there crunching numbers now. And my manager, senior manager, one day sends me a spreadsheet. She's like, Sam, look at this. I look at the tabs and I see at the very end, I see chargeable rates. That's what the tab's called. And I'm thinking, fuck, she forgot to hide that tab. I press the tab. Guess what? Guess what KPMG were charging me out to the client for? Guess the hourly rate. Can you imagine, as an 18-year-old, what I was being charged out to the client for?
£300?
£100 an hour. An hour. I'm being paid damn near minimum wage. And KPMG is collecting, if you analyze that number, it's 200 bags a year. That's what they're charging me out for. And the difference between the 200K a year and what they paid me as a grad, as a school leaver, that's their profit. Do you see? That gap is the profit. If there's no gap, there's no business. Do you know what I mean? The company falls apart. So to me, the pursuit of that profit is immoral because I am not getting the share. I'm not even getting remotely close to what I'm being charged out at. But I'm doing the work. Do you see what I'm saying? And that gap is what kills me, and that's what capitalism is. That's what profit is in capitalism. I just think, why don't we share that profit? Because we created it. The partner who sits in some office and comes at the end of the job and just collects the check, he didn't do the work. He should be entitled to some of it, but come on. Let's be fair now, right?
That's fair. Cool. You know I don't agree with you, but we're gonna move on to our second question, which I think's a really good question. When I wrote it, I thought, fuck me, this one's a nice one.
Yeah, and I think this question, sorry to cut you off. The nice thing about this question is that we've spoken about the economic impact of capitalism now and how that impacts people in an economic sense. But we're transitioning, changing pace a little bit to talk about the social aspect.
Precisely. Leading us on to, does capitalism perpetuate discrimination?
It definitely does. It definitely does. Capitalism, like you said, is profit driven. So it will always cater to the richest consumer groups. And by catering to them, it's going to perpetuate and confirm their negative stereotypes. And by doing that, it perpetuates discrimination.
So I was holding off this point, even though, because obviously we're discussing capitalism, so it's linked. And I didn't want to mention this point in the previous question. As I studied this question, I don't think capitalism is the problem.
Okay.
I think the problem is greed. And particularly to the point that you mentioned earlier with that story, the issue is greed.
Right.
The issue isn't capitalism. Everybody could benefit from that. And that's why I don't think that perpetuates discrimination.
Right.
In its current form, just because we have a white power structure, essentially, and the idea that people like to see themselves in their own workers. Yeah, okay, in that scenario, but that would be the same for any economic system as long as they were the power structure. If anything, capitalism is probably the best economic system to overcome that because of the meritocracy involved in capitalism. So I don't see capitalism as the issue here. I see it more so as the flaws in human behavior.
I do see that, but where you put the blame on greed, human nature and greed, I put the blame back on capitalism because to me, that maximization of profit, like I need every single penny I can get here, that maximization is inherent in capitalism because of the nature of competitive markets, every single owner is looking at every other owner and in competition with other owners. So they have to squeeze their workers as to the maximum to be able to invest in new machinery, new research and development, to stay on top of the competition.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, if there was like a good marketplace, for example, right? So to say we've got £1, and we're bidding on £1, and I bid 50p for £1, and you bid 52p, and I got to 53p. But the idea that you could pay someone really low, they can go somewhere else because of the market.
Now, there are multiple, I accept that. There are multiple factors at play. But like I said before, workers can't just like uproot their lives and just move to wherever they're going to get paid the most on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis. You know what I mean? People have families, people have community ties. So on some level, if the biggest factory owner in my city is paying a certain rate and he is at the top of the competition, let's say, for factories, he kind of has a monopoly on where I can work. Like I don't have many options. I can move city, but my kids are in school. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the issue comes not from capitalism. Does that make sense? Because the market actually allows it. The market drives it. The reason why the market is the way it is and why there's competition means that you're able to move between locations. That's what the market allows for. That's what capitalism allows for. The issue comes with greed and owners wanting as much profit as possible. And for capitalism to work, and I think even for any social structure to work, sort of economic system to work, what you're relying on is a moral compass and some integrity. And arguably, it's not the forefront of capitalism, but I don't think any economic system without those two would be a good system.
Right, but you see the market of capital, yeah, which is owners, equity holders, funders, banks. That's the market of capital. And the market of labor, which are the workers who sell their labor to the capital markets, right? That's how capitalism works. You've got these two markets, and there's an idea that the capital can flow wherever it wants to flow, right? If one company's a bad investment, they can withdraw capital from there, input it there. withdraw it from there, input it into some other country, right? Any geographical location, any industry. Workers don't have that same right. They can't do what capital can do. Capital is faceless, is digits on a computer. It can go wherever it wants to go. But workers are human beings.
Okay.
Do you see the mismatch there?
So what's the alternative?
The alternative is that the workers are owners. The alternative is think twice, a cooperative structure, where all of the workers not only earn a salary, but earn a share of the profit of the company. So they're completely invested in the company. They manage the company, right? And any surplus work that they do goes back into their own pockets. So they're completely incentivized and invested in the future of the company.
And you think that would remove discrimination?
No, not necessarily. I think the way capitalism discriminates is slightly different from what you were describing. I think the way capitalism discriminates is by reinforcing stereotypes in society. So, for example, something like music, right? Everyone knows if you want to blow as a musician and you want to get mainstream appeal, you need to appeal to young white people, right? Young white people have a certain stereotype in general, I'm generalizing here. They have a certain stereotype about young black boys on the streets.
So let's use London as a locality, right?
Yeah, okay. London as a locality. Certain groups of young white listeners have an idea of what young black boys do on the streets of London. So they love drill, because drill reinforces a stereotype that they have of young black boys. If you're a young black artist that wants to do something out of the ordinary that challenges that stereotype, you're never going to get mainstream appeal, because the young white fans will never listen to that music, and the industry bosses are not going to fund your project, right? So in that way, the way you need to cater to the richest consumer groups in a society, for this case is young white people. The art itself, capitalism itself, reinforces that stereotype. It perpetuates the discrimination. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's, I think, one of the main ways capitalism perpetuates discrimination. There's other ways, but I think that's
actually really fair, and I sort of accept that point. But my issue lies heavily with the fact that they have those stereotypes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that is where the issue is.
Like, if we could unwind the clock before the stereotype was even created, that'd be great. I still think, now I've got other reasons why I think capitalism can even create a negative stereotype out of nothing. But obviously we live in the world 2020, you know what I mean? What we are where we are. And unfortunately, I don't think there's any corner of the earth we could go to where someone isn't an underclass, someone isn't being marginalized. And for that reason, capitalism is just running rampant on these stereotypes in multiple ways. Like, if you think about beauty products, right? Beauty products are going to cater to the biggest consumer groups in the UK. In the UK, that's going to be white women. Black women aren't going to be catered to in the same way that white women will be. And it's just like, you can multiply that across all these different groups and marginalized situations. And unfortunately, there's just no escaping it.
Fair. That's a strong argument.
In addition to what I'm saying, I also think that capitalism is inherently classist. So before, when we're talking about the capital and labor markets, what capitalism does in a social context is that it separates owners from workers, and it puts owners above workers in the social economic order. And to me, that's a bit discriminatory.
So the issue I have with that statement is that if we go back to the previous question where I said you have a business owner, you have an investor, you have a laborer, and you have the consumer.
Sure.
I see that as a community. I see without the consumer, everything else is void. Without the laborer, everything else is void. Without the guy with the idea, everything else is void. Without the guy with the money, everything else is void.
Yeah.
Therefore, you all work together in order to enable your community.
Right.
And no one is more important than the other.
Isn't there a hierarchy in that community? No?
Why? I'm essentially saying that, let me finish this point. I'm essentially saying that no one is more valuable than others, because if you remove one aspect of it,
it falls apart.
Exactly, the product doesn't get produced. And so if you accept that, the idea that one is above another is the issue here. And that is a human problem. That is an ego problem, not a capitalist problem.
Well, I think if you have employers and employees are beholden to their employer, no?
No.
Come on.
The idea is that you do the work. You just have to do the work. So say you have a manager. Are you talking about like an actual like owner and an employee, or talking
Yeah.
about like manager and
Owner.
Without those employees, you're not an owner.
You own nothing, yeah.
Exactly. Therefore, the employees are just as valuable as you.
Right, but in a relationship sense, right? In a human sense, the owner holds more gravitas in that community that you're talking about than one individual worker.
Yeah.
Like in a sense, the owner's power or gravitas in the community is the owner's gravitas. The worker's gravitas, the individual worker's gravitas, is divided by however many workers there are. Do you know what I mean? So they might have 1/20th or 1/50th. You know what I mean? There's a power imbalance there. Plus, I employ you. I pay your salary. I can stop paying your salary. I can sack you. The worker can't say that to the boss. Can he?
Yeah, but they can stop working. If they don't enjoy the conditions of the work,
You mean like go on a strike?
for example,
Workers unite.
or leave the company. And companies that are run particularly badly,
Yeah.
and we've seen this, like companies that are run particularly badly will not survive.
That's true.
And
That's
they
true.
will not be successful. And that's why I don't think the problem is capitalism. Do you understand? That structure is not the issue. It's the egos involved in that structure. And that's where the problem is.
I do accept that. And I do think, the egos certainly don't help. They make things so much worse.
Yeah.
And I see your point. I don't see long-term futures in toxic companies where owners are all stepping all over their employees. Like, it's
Exactly.
not working. And in those situations, employees do exercise their power. They do. They revolt at some point. So I do hear your point. I hear it.
All right, lovely. We're on to our last segment here, where it's a dilemma in which we basically we'll announce a dilemma which will be linked to the thing that we're discussing, which today is capitalism, and then we discuss our viewpoints on what we would do in that particular scenario. So Tef, hit us with it, baby.
You work for a major hair company that has historically made products for the mass market. This year, you personally have led the launch of a new advertising campaign that uses models from minority groups that haven't historically identified with your products. When the campaign launches, it's a success with the minority groups, but faces major backlash with your main consumer base, who feel like the company focus is shifting away from them. There are widespread boycotts of your company that threaten to significantly impact sales. Your job and your future in this industry are at stake, and there's both internal and external pressure to pull the campaign. What do you do?
So this dilemma essentially is using capitalism to lean on my values and sort of my moral compass.
Correct.
And there's no chance I pull the campaign. If I believe the campaign is the right campaign, as we've seen before, like, you're not always on the right side of history in that particular time.
Right.
And eventually you do end up there.
You will be validated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to sit on the wrong side of history at that time. And if I must lose my job, I must lose my job.
For real, you go that far?
I'd go that far. Because if I truly believe in that and I think it's important, that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
I love that. I completely agree. I think, especially given the cause of the campaign, that you're trying to represent like underrepresented groups for your company, you're trying to make them feel seen. That is such a valiant and like honorable thing to do. And like you say, over the course of time, you will be validated. Like that was definitely the right play for that advertising campaign that year. In that instance, I'm riding with it.
You have to.
I'm going hard.
When I was doing my research on capitalism, one statement really stuck out. And the statement was essentially around, how do you want people to view you at the end of your life, right? And if you then look at capitalism underneath that lens, your issues that you're talking about, if you care about other people and you care about your community, won't be issues. And in the sense of this dilemma, and in regards to this dilemma, it's sort of the idea that if you believe in something and your moral compass is telling you this is the correct thing to do, no amount of money should change that.
And I'll be real, you're being very, very consistent here, like admirably consistent, because you're saying that part of the issue of capitalism is human nature. And here you've held strong. You've held strong. Your morals there in concrete.
My thing.
But let me change the scenario slightly. Let me make the situation a bit different. And let's test. Instead of the backlash being from the main consumer base because they feel misrepresented, let's say there's backlash from the minority group because you made a mistake in their representation. So one of the models was presented a certain way that parts of the minority group find slightly offensive, and they are calling for you to pull the campaign. Does that change your calculation in any way?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Because if you made the campaign in order to represent people and they don't feel represented, that means your campaign's a failure.
Yeah.
So essentially, you have to pull it. And I think that's a pretty straightforward decision. What would you do?
I would also pull it. Let me not lie. I'd also pull it. I guess the reason why I wanted to ask that variation is that the main minority group also felt misrepresented in the first instance. Do you see what I'm saying? So here I'm just switching the representation. But again, to me, like you say, the goal is to represent underrepresented people. So, you know, I'm going to get some backlash from the main group. It's all right. You know what I mean? We ride with that. So yeah, I think, I like it when we agree.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's good.
Dickhead. All right. Cut. Man. Thank you, man, for joining us. And hopefully you come back and hopefully you enjoyed it. Much love. Benz.
Yo. I'm ready. Fuck off. It has to be Sundays from now on.
Yeah, just better for us, innit?
Yeah, no weekdays.